Barry Seal, a name that once commanded the attention of South American drug lords, the CIA, and even the White House. With nothing more than a single-engine aircraft, he not only amassed an unimaginable fortune, but also ignited one of the most bizarre and outrageous black market operations in American history. At the height of his power, his wealth rivaled that of a small nation. Cash overflowed from every corner of his home: closets, yards, stables, shoeboxes, even dog kennels. The money piled up faster than he could launder it, and even Barry himself grew fearful of how quickly it was all happening. This is a true story. The protagonist, Barry Seal, led a life more audacious than Ethan Hunt in Mission Impossible. Originally a pilot for TWA, Barry was exceptionally skilled, bold, meticulous, and the youngest captain in the airline's history. His career was flourishing, and his family life was stable, but he was never content with routine. Taking advantage of his position, he began smuggling Cuban cigars on the side. One evening, a mysterious man approached him at a bar, introducing himself as a CIA agent named Schaefer. The man revealed Barry's smuggling operation, but not to arrest him. Instead, he offered something far more thrilling. During the Cold War, the Soviet Union had begun supporting militant groups in Central America. The CIA couldn't ignore this growing threat. They recruited Barry for covert reconnaissance missions, using small aircraft to fly deep into the jungle, photographing enemy camps, and gathering intel. To sweeten the deal, they even gave him a brand new twin-engine plane. One test flight was all it took. Barry was hooked. Though the missions were risky, the adrenaline was exactly the kind of excitement he craved. He soon quit his job at the airline, keeping his new life a secret from his wife. His missions in Central America became the stuff of legend. Alone in his plane, Barry navigated hostile terrain and enemy fire, capturing some of the clearest reconnaissance images the CIA had ever seen. His success earned him praise within the agency, and Schaefer received a promotion. When Barry asked for a raise, Schaefer refused, then promptly gave him more responsibilities. Now, in addition to aerial surveillance, Barry was to deliver cash payments to local officials in exchange for intelligence. It was a simple, lucrative routine: fly down, take pictures, deliver cash, return home. But his repeated trips caught the attention of some dangerous new players: the Medellin cartel, a rising force in Colombia's drug trade. Despite their vast coca plantations, they struggled to smuggle product into the U.S. sea routes. Cargo shipping, even human mules, all proved inefficient. Learning of Barry's skills and access, the cartel offered him a staggering deal: $2,000 per kilogram of cocaine, with his aircraft capable of carrying 300 kilograms per trip. That meant $600,000 per flight. Though conflicted, Barry couldn't ignore the opportunity. Working for the CIA brought excitement, but barely any money. Supporting a family required more. To avoid detection, Barry had to take off from rough, makeshift runways deep in the jungle. The terrain was so treacherous that other pilots had failed, crashing into trees before ever getting airborne. But Barry was no ordinary pilot. Dodging jungle canopy by inches, he took off with ease. Using maps provided by the CIA, he navigated around law enforcement radar and airdropped the drugs at designated locations. After disinfecting his aircraft, he would land back at the CIA's airstrip without a trace. It all seemed too perfect until he went to collect his $600,000 and walked straight into a police raid at the cartel's estate. Everyone was arrested. For the cartel, bribing their way out was routine. Barry, however, endured a brutal stay in prison, even losing a tooth in the process. Fortunately, the CIA intervened, securing his release and relocating his family to a quiet town in the American South. They still had plans for Barry. Now, the CIA tasked him with smuggling weapons to anti-communist rebels in Central America. They provided him with radar maps of U.S. law enforcement agencies to ensure safe travel. As a further incentive, Schaefer returned the $600,000 Barry had earned from his drug run, a tacit approval of his side business. But things didn't go as planned. Upon arrival, the rebels showed no interest in the weapon. Instead, they robbed Barry of his personal belongings, his sunglasses, and boots proving more valuable to them than AK-47s. On his next trip, Barry came prepared with magazines, beer, and, if finally managing to retain his dignity, word of the weapons reached the Medellin cartel. Desperate to arm their own private army to resist police interference, they made a deal with the rebels, who, more interested in profit than ideology, sold the American weapons to the cartel. Barry became the essential middleman, flying arms to the cartel, taking back cocaine, delivering it to the rebels for sale, then returning with a new shipment. At times, he would refuel in Panama, trading information with U.S. spies stationed there before completing his drops in U.S. territory. While the cartel and the rebels thrived, the CIA remained oblivious to the full scope of Barry's operation. To increase capacity, Barry recruited 4 pilots, formed an aerial logistics team, and even acquired military-grade transport planes. He became the undisputed king of air airborne smuggling. The CIA, still benefiting from his missions, turned a blind eye. At this point, Barry's earnings defied calculation. Initially, he stored cash in banks, prompting the opening of 7 or 8 new branches in a town of just a few thousand residents, most created solely to serve him. Banks even built private vaults for his deposits. He opened dozens of shell companies to launder money. Elderly janitors were suddenly named CEOs, but the money came in faster than he could clean it. Barry stuffed it everywhere: shoeboxes, stables, wardrobes, suitcases, digging holes in the yard often unearthed previous caches. At one point, opening a storage cabinet nearly crushed him under a mountain of bills. But no empire goes unnoticed forever. Barry's dealings with drug, arms, and laundered money attracted attention from multiple federal agencies. They dispatched aircraft to surround him mid-flight, forcing him to crash land on a small town road. Dazed, Barry stumbled out, handed a nearby child $30,000 in hush money, and fled on a tiny bicycle, abandoning an entire plane's worth of cocaine. He then had to explain the loss to the cartel himself. Things worsened when his brother-in-law showed up, eager to get involved. Opening a random shoebox and finding enough cash to buy a Cadillac, he couldn't resist flaunting the wealth. Despite Barry's warnings, the man paraded around with boxes of cash, until he was inevitably arrested. Around the same time, federal agencies had begun monitoring Barry's family, suspecting money laundering based on their company's suspiciously high earnings. Trying to protect him, Barry secured a top-tier lawyer, bailed him out, and gave him a fake passport with instructions to flee the country. But his brother-in-law didn't listen. His car exploded before he could reach the airport. The cartel had discovered his arrest and eliminated him to protect their operation. Barry had no choice but to dispose of the evidence himself. Soon after, the CIA conducted an internal review of Schaefer's program. More than half the weapons had ended up in the hands of the cartel, and most of the rebels had vanished. The program was deemed a failure. Schaefer erased all records of Barry's involvement. Without the CIA's protection, Barry became a prime target. DA, FBI, state police, and financial crimes units surrounded his home. He was handed over to the state attorney general, who vowed to imprison him. But after one mysterious phone call, the attorney reluctantly released Barry on the spot. Barry thought Schaefer had come through once more. Instead, he was sent directly to the White House. This time, it was President Reagan who needed him. With the administration eager to crack down on drugs and communism to win public favor, Barry was asked to provide evidence linking Panama's government to the cartel. He agreed, having no real choice. Using hidden cameras provided by the government, Barry captured incriminating footage during a supposed drug deal. But before any arrests were made, the footage was leaked on national television, exposing Barry as a federal informant. Once again betrayed, Barry lost all remaining assets. The government seized his hidden cash. Only his wife's jewelry was left. The cartel immediately dispatched assassins. Knowing time was short, Barry made arrangements for his wife and children to go into hiding, but he was left behind, a marked man. Hoping for protection, he asked to be imprisoned. Instead, he was sentenced to 1,000 hours of community service, no jail time. He realized then he was nothing more than a disposable pawn in a global chess game. Living in cheap motels, he recorded his entire story on tape, hoping someone would one day hear the truth. Until one day, as he parked his car, 3 assassins approached. Gunshots rang out, and Barry Seal's life came to a sudden and violent end. The FBI took possession of his tape. The CIA quietly continued its covert operation, this time shifting focus to Iran. Barry Seal, once the king of the skies, ultimately became nothing more than a pawn in the political game. His story ended in tragedy, but the true extent of his involvement with the CIA, the cartels, and the U.S. government remains a dark chapter in history. His wife and children, now living in obscurity, are the only ones left to remember the incredible life he led. The diamond-studded bracelet on his wife's wrist silently tells the story of their past, a past that was as dangerous as it was lucrative. But the story doesn't end here. There's so much more to explore about the CIA's covert operation, the Medellin cartel, and the dark underbelly of American politics during the Cold War. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we'll delve into another shocking real-life tale. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to get notified when our next video drops. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think about Barry Seal's legacy? Was he a hero, or just another criminal caught in the web of politics?